And that's where the relationship building comes in as well too. Like one thing that I admire about yourself is that any person that I've ever worked with or spoken to that's interacted with you feels as though they have a close relationship with you, even if they've only met you a couple of times. And for me, when I work with somebody, the first thing that I try to do is relate to them and form a relationship so that we can build on something that is deeper than X's and O's. That psychology, physiology interaction. So when I speak to somebody and I can make an impact in a way outside the X's and O's, I know it will transfer over. So when I give them advice about X's and O's, they're going to be more likely to listen to it.
I would say the advice outside the X and O's, with the intermediates and above, is more important.
Yeah.
100%. It's 100% because now you're dealing with confidence. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with, where is that confidence when that fatigue management isn't on their side?
Yeah.
Which happens as you get closer to a meet. It's
Absolutely.
Just part of the process. Or if they start their training cycle and they feel a little behind, where's that? All those mental things, oh, fuck. They're huge.
Yeah.
And being able to, now outside of those people, it's a whole,
yeah.
It's a different dynamic, but it's still that communication aspect.
They're still people.
Yes.
Like you still have to deal with the person. And that's, I think I learned that much later in my career than I wish I did, but I think I needed those years to get to where I am in terms of the communication strategies, because now I can help coach others on how to speak to their clients and how to relate to them, because I was a very unrelatable kid. Like I remember Todd and I hated each other. He hired me and I immediately thought he regretted it. Mm-hmm. So I was a dickhead. And, we had coffee on Sunday. He's like, no, I was a dickhead too. I'm like, thank you. Mm-hmm. It's been 10 years. You finally admit you're a dickhead. Mm-hmm. But, without going through that tough transition towards now, I'm like, I needed that. And I think more coaches need that. I think you need to be challenged. I think you need to be pushed. I think you need to have your beliefs pushed and forced to defend your points of view instead of sticking yourselves in these echo chambers that further reinforce these, I don't even want to say stupid, because a lot of the points of view aren't stupid. They're just misapplied. Mm-hmm. Put yourself in positions that force you to think critically about what you're doing. Like, I cannot stress that enough.
As the educator now, though, and this is part of your business, as part of your service, how can you do that?
Like me, personally?
Yes, how can you do that to the coaches that are hiring you to become better coaches?
Yeah.
Knowing that, part of it, for lack of a better definition, is to be the dickhead to be able to push them. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's a business too. This isn't like an internship where the person's not going to leave.
Right.
You run the risk of them saying, fuck you, I'm going to go find somebody else to learn from.
It happens all the time. So I ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I ask a lot about people's whys. I'll use an example. Like 2 weeks ago, I had a call with a client. It was the first meet. So we have our first meeting. He decides to work with me as a mentee. We go through the payment. He shows up. He's filled out his intake form. I'm talking about how he's going to do X, Y, and Z, how he wants to teach kids. He wants to work primarily with youth about the lessons they can learn under the bar and how they can build confidence and how they can do this and that. And then he says, I'm the product of my product. That's a line that I like to use. Like, are you the product of your product? Are you what you're trying to sell? But then in the same breath, he's saying, yes, I'm the product of my product, but he doesn't read because he keeps giving up on books. He quit multiple jobs. He only does continuing education in certain ways because he can't commit to it. He's never achieved anything beyond baseline level of physical fitness himself. He's lost weight and regained it multiple times. I looked at him and said, listen, I'm not coming at you to be rude. This is to help you grow. You are not the product of your product. He says, but the videos that I make and the content that I put out, I said, no, you have no confidence. You have no follow through. You have no consistency. These are the things that you're trying to teach other people. You need to start doing that for yourself first. And he kind of like sat back and he was receptive to it. I said what he needed to hear. Mm-hmm. He could very easily have gone out and been like, fuck you.
Yeah.
fine. I said what I needed to say. But the way I said it, the delivery, that communication, we had already built a rapport because we'd spoken on the phone, on Zoom prior. Yeah. It came from a place where he knew I was trying to help him. That's on the interpersonal side, which is sometimes harder. On the intellectual side, it comes down to asking questions and challenging. I have enough background educationally, I can hang it with anyone's conversations. I'm not a doctor of physical therapy, but my knowledge of biomechanics and physiology and stuff like that, I can hang. So I'm going to push you. If you make a claim, I'm going to ask you why. I'm going to ask for your evidence, ask for these things. I'm going to present alternate viewpoints. I'm going to flip the script on you, because that you need to be able to defend yourself. Because the internet, where all of our business exists, is ruthless. Hell yeah. If you put out a post that says, I don't do this, or this is stupid, or whatever inflammatory question or inflammatory statement you want to make, and someone comes back and says, well, actually, you need to be able to either defend your point with reasonable evidence or have the integrity to say, wow, you're right. I might need to rethink this viewpoint. And that right there, to me, is the sign of someone who is educated and is open-minded and will learn and progress over time. What people forget now in the social media age is that biases exist, and they exist very deeply when money is involved.
Oh, of course.
So you have, let's say, the carnivore MD. He strapped his entire life into only eat meat, vegetables are poison, just eat meat, organ meats, whatever it might be. If a piece of literature came out that disputed that vegetables and fruits are healthy, which there are plenty of evidence to support that fruits and vegetables are healthy, and that you should probably eat some non-animal based fats, he would defend his viewpoint to the end of the world, regardless of how legitimate that evidence was, because his entire life is attached to it. On the contrary, a true evidence-based professional is making their opinions based on the most recent evidence, both experimental and intellectual, or experimental and experiential. And so their viewpoints can change over time.
And it's open.
It's open.
Yes.
So if someone comes to me and says, Paul, the way you're doing this is dumb, here's why. And I'll be like, I'll read what they say, I'll hear it, I'll listen, I'll assimilate it into my own philosophy. Like, maybe what I'm doing isn't dumb, but I can integrate this somehow. I can use what you're saying to make my process better. It doesn't make my process stupid right now, but my process can always be improved. That evidence-based professional is always open-minded. If you are so set in your ways and defend your viewpoint regardless of the evidence, you're a piece of shit.
No, I believe not only that, but I've been around long enough to be able to see, people that will have those solid, grounded viewpoints. I've seen them, let's say it's on, I'll use an example of joint friendly movements, right? Or injury free,
yes,
training, injury free high level strength training, whatever you want to call it. And they base that whole thing on they've been injury free. Right? And then 20 years later, they're getting a knee replacement and a hip replacement. Now, everything that now they're trying to pivot. And that pivot is, this isn't because of the training. It's because of, it's like, God, yeah, okay, I get it. I've had replacements. It's genetics, it's, how much body weight you weigh. And the other fucking component is training.
Yeah, it all plays in.
Yeah, so but then they have to me, it's like exhausting, because then they have to backtrack everything that they ever said and try to find some excuse as to why what they said was still true and that's still valid, but yet their own body is exposing that's based upon their experiential evidence of themselves, which is what this all came from in the first place.
Yeah.
It blows up in their face. Same with cardiac heart issues. That if you do this, you're going to prevent heart issues. Then all of a sudden, boom, heart issues. I mean, that's a big, broad statement, right? To be able to say,
really broad
this is going to prevent heart issues when there's so many fucking things that happen to impact that.
I think you've done a few of these, but like things I was wrong about. Mm-hmm. What a novel concept.
Everything.
I was, yeah. Like, I've been thinking about doing a series of things like that, but like things that I used to do that I now think have no place.
Well, give me a couple now.
Oh man, coming in and rolling around on the floor would probably be one of the biggest ones, you know, foam rolling and warming up for 30 minutes at a time. Understanding that, you know, exercise selection, recovery, things of that nature play a much bigger role into your mobility than how much mobility work that you do on a day-to-day basis. The nutrition side, for sure, I was definitely way on the restriction side. I was all the way on I've done, you know, every type of restrictive diet you can possibly do. And it wasn't until I came back over to the more, we'll call it liberal, flexible approach that I was able to have long-term success and actually live in a body that I like living in. So two of those, I would say the volume in training volume being most important. I definitely now see that we need very little volume to actually progress. Training frequency would also be one. I did not capitalize nearly enough on training frequency when I was coming up as a lifter and a coach. Most of my clients will perform competition variations multiple times per week. And that helps across the board in terms of like, well, we're accessing positions more often, so we don't need as many warm-ups. We're improving our skill acquisition. We can manage our recovery a little bit better because each session we're not digging our hole as deep. So frequency is definitely one that I've come full circle on. Man, there's so many, so many. Training to failure. I never believed in training to failure. I thought, you know, if I'm training to failure, I'm going to be getting worse. I'm going to be digging myself a hole. Now I almost exclusively train to failure, and most of my clients do as well, or at least close to it, on their non-barbell work whenever it's safe. How much time you got?
Yeah, that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Well, the weird thing is a lot of those, you know, 10 years from now, I may circle back, circle back, but you're leaving the room to do that.
Absolutely, and it's context dependent too.
Yes.
Like my hip issues, I still do mobility work before I do lower body. I have specific drills that I do that I know help me perform better in my workouts. So I do spend some time rolling around on the floor. Does everybody do that? No, because they're not 35 years old, have had multiple surgeries and tears. It's context dependent. But because I have experience and understand those things, now I know that they don't need to be applied broadly, and I can pick and choose the context in which I do apply them and to the degree in which they're applied, because everything exists on a spectrum.
Yes.
Right?
And over a period of time, I think you need to develop what that spectrum is, where to stay with the rolling, right? So that is, say, now my upper back's tight. It's tighter than it should be. Right. Let's put it that way. So I will do passes on that because it's tighter than it should be. Now, if it's not, and I start, you know, and I'm not doing it. You know, the lower back's like the big culprit. Like, never foam roll your lower back. My caveat is, but what? Because you want your lower back stiff, right,
of course,
to be able to train. But what if it's too stiff? Like, what if you walk in and it feels too stiff?
What if you have a back pump?
Yes.
No one wants to do shit when they have a back pump.
Yeah, get it to your level of stiff.
Yeah.
Right. That's the nuance, right?
For sure.
And again, do you know that unless you know what too stiff is?